I have a shameless plug. I really appreciate you guys listening in some ways to my conversations about identity, but did you know that chatting isn't the only thing I do? I love to paint. And now you can have a bit of my art in your house. It also makes great gifts, by the way. So check it out at aubreyjeanart.etsy.com. That's aubreyjeanart.etsy.com. And also hit me up on Instagram at my handle, aubreyjeanart. I'd love to hear from you. Welcome to 132nd Cherokee, the podcast explaining why we feel connected to cultures in our ancestry, even if we only have 1/32 of them in our bloodline. I'm your host, Aubrey Jean. As you know, this podcast is really about my mother's side of the family and exploration, right now at least, about this mystery that we have that we may or may not be Cherokee. It's really interesting, though, sometimes to talk to other members of my family who don't really have anything to do with that bloodline. So I'm talking to my cousin today, who's on my dad's side of the family. And right off the bat, she kind of surprises me with somebody from our line who might be Cherokee. So that's kind of interesting. But she also has a lot of other stories that are really relevant to DNA and genealogy and kind of reconnecting with members of your family that are alive today. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy.
Hey, I'm a painter, a writer, a musician, and now I'm an anchorman. That's how it works, right? I'm using the Anchor app to make my first podcast, and it is free. There are certain tools that I use to record and edit my podcast, and it's right on my phone or computer, and it distributes my podcast for me so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more, and I can make money from this podcast, which would be crazy because it's all about my family. But it's everything I need to make a podcast in one place, and you can too. If I can do it, you can. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Your dad, when he did his DNA before I did mine,
Yeah.
he says we have no Indian because we're always told that we have Indian.
Right.
And your dad's like, we don't have any. I don't have any in my blood. And I'm like, what? And so when I got mine done, the only Indian I have is the Mexican Indian. That's it. We've been told all our lives that we have like Cherokee Indian. Okay, have you been getting emails, updates? We found this information,
No, I might have turned that off.
So we've been getting updates for Cherokee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for our parents' side of the family. And I'm like, Cherokee, I thought Pat says and the DNA thing, there is no Indian.
You send it to me because I would love to start exploring that as
a copy of these application paper to be in the reservation.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, somebody has application papers in our family.
Wow.
And so I'm confused. Why do we have that?
That's kind of the disconnect between being genetically Native American, but then having the DNA. Like you show me your DNA, and then you show me your DNA like a month later, and things updated and refined when their data got better. And you were one of the earlier ones to get it, I think, in the family at least. And so it is not the end all. I think the DNA test is not the end all answer to these questions. I think it's just a snapshot, and then it may give us more information down the line as well.
Especially what I read is that when more people do it, it clarifies.
Yeah, exactly. The more people do it, the better it's going to be.
Oh, he's like, maybe the Cherokees don't want us.
I know for sure the Cherokees don't want us. They have their own lives, and they're living their lives, and they're building up their community. Right. They don't want more of us in there. Like these white people, they're like, here I come, hello. They do not care. But yeah, I would love to see that document, and so maybe I could look on mine and contact Family Search, or I don't know what the deal is. But if you'd send it to me, that would be great, so I can kind of look it up, and maybe I'll do a little more research and see. Maybe I can find other relatives to contact. I want to know what documents they have and where are they coming from, and who is connected, and that'd be great to know. Well, I've asked questions too of people who are not Cherokee or not part of our family at all, and we have some pretty good talks. And I was thinking about you about it because, it's kind of like, okay, you grow up and you have like a family culture or a family identity, but how do you get the identity? And then what happens when at the point where expectations are not met? I was just thinking about you and being you are half.
Did you talk to your dad recently?
Yeah, but don't say anything. Yeah.
Well, because
No.
Because did he tell you I talked to him upset?
No.
I was upset when I talked to him.
What did you say?
When I was learning some things. Well, okay, because I was upset when I learned about stories about Grandma
Where did you learn them?
from Uncle Fred.
Okay, so Uncle Fred is telling stories.
So I call up Pat. I said, Pat, is this true? He says, here's the thing. And he's got a level head. I noticed your dad does.
Yeah.
I was in Mom's tummy.
Right.
So I don't know what happened exactly. All I know is what everyone told me.
Yeah.
But he says, I heard there was a discrepancies. Oh my goodness, I guess those are my shoes. Take those off, those are mine.
Okay, focus. Elaine. Steve, you're being recorded for posterity right now. This squabble is part of the podcast now forever.
Is it on right now?
Yes, I'm recording.
Where was I?
You said that you called up Dad upset and Fred had been
to Grandma. And so he said, talk to Fred about it. And I said, well, he told me, everything. The story about, our grandfather disappeared on a gambling problem is not true.
I don't know that story.
That's the thing, like...
All I know, no, I don't really know what caused the divorce. All I know that they got divorced and my grandma left Mississippi and headed for California when my dad was in the womb.
Well, I've been told all my life, our grandfather left to go gambling and never came back. And this is while they lived in California and Grandma was pregnant with your dad.
Okay.
It took a while for help to arrive and our parents' grandparents.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
They came all the way from Mississippi to California, picked up Grandma and the kids.
Right.
And some of their belongings, and they traveled back to Mississippi.
Right. Okay. I remember that.
And that's how your dad, out of all the kids, was the only one born in Mississippi. All the other kids were born in California.
Oh, okay.
And our grandfather, our biological grandfather, he did not have a gambling problem. He was in a mental hospital because he was busy working 2 jobs while Grandma was out having an affair and trying to take care of his family. Had a mental breakdown and was in a mental hospital for like a week. And that's when Grandma left. Our great-grandparents picked up our grandma and the kids and moved them to Mississippi while she was pregnant with Pat.
Okay.
I know at some point there was question, after Pat was born, after the affair and all that stuff, they weren't sure that Pat was because Grandma had an affair.
Right.
Of course, when you look at our grandfather, he looks like a spitting image of his father.
Right.
After the divorce was granted, it was out that she was pregnant. During the whole time she lived in Mississippi, she was writing letters to this guy named Art.
Right.
Racket.
Art Racket.
Yeah. So she was writing letters this whole time while she was in Mississippi.
Okay.
And after your dad was born, Art came to Mississippi, picked up Grandma and all the kids, and moved them back to California. And that's how they ended up back in California.
Okay.
So I asked why we never met Grandma's brothers. And it's because Grandma wrote off basically the family.
Oh.
And never saw anybody again.
It's interesting that grandma writes off the family, and then when my dad is a teenager, he runs away, and you could say he writes off the family. I mean, he comes back to it, but he writes off the family. I feel like I'm a product of like 3 generations of people who are just like, I'm out of here. Let's blow this popsicle stand.
I was getting anxiety. I was feeling really upset. So after, I know that there were some more things that they wanted to tell me, but they felt like they couldn't tell me. Grandma's gone. She can't defend herself.
I don't know.
And
I guess that's true, but I think there's something to be said for speaking the truth anyway, as long as you're handling it
yes,
with compassion and you're handling it with perspective. And so if they can give
yes.
context and not be judgmental about it, I'm going to see what my dad thinks, because
Oh,
when I heard about it, there is a part of me that was like, that's my direct line. I'm not sure what I feel. I feel something though. I feel something very profound. And so I asked dad, like, I'm not sure what I'm feeling right now. What are you feeling? And I think it was just too emotional for him to really talk about. And he hadn't really processed it. So I think we'll have to process it when we get the definitive
so he
answer.
did talk to his brother.
He bought Fred a DNA test. So, I mean, I know
Well, he did.
he
Oh,
did.
wow.
Yeah. So I know this is going down. Speaking of DNA tests, so you got a DNA test and you have kind of an amazing story about the other side of your family from the DNA test.
Yeah, because when during that time when I was a little girl, when parents get a divorce and one moves away, the other parent doesn't really see the kids or anything. So it has been over 42 years since I have seen my biological father. 8.5 years old.
And you're 8.5 years old, and Aunt Sandy and you and your brother left covertly, shall we say, to live around your mom's family.
Took a Greyhound bus. Yeah.
So what was your feeling? Because I think it's crazy wild, because you've been trying for several years to figure out, like, if you could find people from the area, from California, that you knew that they lived, but you couldn't find anybody for a really long time.
Well, the reason why is because, so my biological father's name is Juan. You know how many Juans there are? The Mexican culture
5?
recycles names.
6 maybe. It's not a big deal.
There are a lot of Juans out there.
And I mean, you grew up with a white mom, but she spoke Spanish. And so, she spoke Spanish all the time. Yeah. I mean, even imagine with you lived with her and she spoke Spanish all the time. I mean, I didn't live with her. I did actually, but not all the time, not when you lived with her. And, she spoke Spanish all of the time. So it was definitely part of her adopted culture.
The reason what led me to this journey of doing the DNA test, I did have a hard time getting information. That I went to genealogy classes and those people could not help me. And so they said I would have to try to contact the family.
When you first got the information from the DNA kit, when you got it back, your results, what was that like to see? Didn't you have like one or more cousins on that side that had already done DNA as well?
I had 2 aunts that showed on there and a bunch of cousins.
So they had all done this DNA kit. So not only did you get a DNA kit, but they all had to do this DNA thing as well. They happened to have done it, and then you guys all showed up on each other's charts.
Funny thing is, it's like, because I have some friends that are Mexican, and I asked them, do you think, before I did the DNA test, I said, do you think there would be other Mexicans doing this test? And she says, they're straight from Mexico? Probably not, because Mexicans are superstitious and they're not going to give up their saliva. And so they're very superstitious people. So I was surprised to see 2 of my aunts, because they were raised, for the most part, in Mexico.
Right.
Before they were about teenagers. The kids were all young still. They're still in school when they came to the United States.
Right.
I wasn't sure what to expect. I picked a cousin and one aunt to write to. He went to one of my other cousins and said, I was off of Ancestry DNA for 1 month. It's been like 1 month since I last checked, and all of a sudden I'm related to all these white people. And she's like, what did you say? What was her name? She says, give it to me. What is her name? Like, and because she remembers me.
Oh, neat.
And do you know who she is? She says, no. Have you contacted her? He says, no. Why are you on this Ancestry DNA if you're not going to contact anybody?
That's funny. And why do you log in so much? Like, what are you hoping for?
Started searching me on Facebook. Apparently, they've been looking for me all these years. Looked at all the faces and saw my smile, and she says, "Okay, this one has to be Elaine. Look at her smile, and then she
You
instant
do have the
messaged
same
me.
smile. You do have the same smile.
Yes.
Like that picture that you gave me in sepia tones with like your little girl rocking on that horse outside like the store or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the exact same
No, it was my
smile.
cousin's rocking horse.
Oh, okay. Well, it is the exact same smile. Like you have not changed
Yes.
there a bit.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it is distinct.
And then I called her. I was so nervous. I
Yeah.
was so scared. My heart was beating hard. Oh my goodness, your mom, she was my favorite aunt. And I
Aw.
was so sad when she disappeared. And I had to tell her she wasn't alive anymore. I
Yeah.
said she passed away a month ago. And she would, send me pictures. And she says, "Do you remember this rocking horse?" I said, "Well, I don't really remember, but because I blocked a lot of things."
Yeah.
Because you know how what trauma to what your brain does is like protect itself.
Yeah.
It blocks a lot of traumatic things, and so
Yeah.
I have blocked a lot of things.
Yeah.
I've learned.
Your brain's trying to protect yourself.
Yep.
Your body remembers it. Your body remembers all that trauma. Your body carries that trauma.
Oh yeah.
But your mind is like, no,
most definitely
shield me.
Yes. Exactly. My mom babysat those kids.
Right.
And when my father would go in a drunken rage, we would go over there and hide out and spend the night over there until he's sober.
Got it.
Yeah, and so we were always at their house, always, and vice versa.
How does it feel to be reunited a little bit? I bet you have a little mixed feelings about that.
Yes, because after I had my first phone call, I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm still good. I'm still safe." Because part of me felt like I was like, "Okay," part of my childhood came back.
Yeah. After
getting off the phone, I had to tell myself, "I'm still okay. I'm still good. I'm okay. I'm not hurt." And because it was scary.
Yeah.
It was really scary. I mean, it's like I had one of my cousins crying on the phone, and talking to me, and so happy that apparently when they have family gatherings, they'll go back and reminisce about the old days, and they say, "Do you remember it? These kids?" And they're like, "Oh yes, I remember these kids." Which is me and John.
Yeah.
Even with the aunts and uncles, they would say, "Yes, we still remember them."
Like when they remember this, do they understand? Do they kind of comprehend? The adults have got to comprehend. Like there's a lot of trauma that you guys went through. I mean, if you're over at these people's place and you're over because you're hiding out, I mean, adults know. Is that kind of thing like reminisced about? Like do these kids understand?
No, they didn't reminisce about that. They reminisce about good memories.
Do the kids understand, or is it unspoken, but people know about it, or is it just kind of swept under the carpet?
Unspoken, they don't. Yeah, it's kind of unspoken. They don't understand. I made everybody who had contact with me do not tell Juan about me yet. So they kept my secret for almost a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I'm back, basically. Victor, he really wanted to tell Juan really bad, because he says, I've been talking to my aunts about you. We're wondering, maybe you remember wrong. And I was kind of upset.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean I remember wrong? I remember right. I remember the pain. I remember the horror and the police all the time. And it's like, don't tell me I remember wrong, because I did not.
Yeah.
It'd be different if I was like 4 years old.
Right.
But I was 8.5.
Yeah. I mean, people can talk about memories so much that you can adopt memories into your head, but you're right. Like I think that at 8.5, and not just 8.5, but so first of all, 8.5, yes, you were old enough. I think that some of the whatever is true had to kind of gotten through. Like you couldn't have replaced all of your memories and all of your trauma with this awful, yes, this awfulness, right? But then not only that, like you also have your brother who went when he was an adult, and he went and hung out And so he's coming back and confirming that, yeah, there's some aspects about this that are completely true, and trying to shield you, like, don't even do it. Don't even reach out, because his situation was not as great.
Yeah. No, because he almost got killed.
I admit there's a little part of me that's scared to put this part on the podcast. I never met these people, but just because of the residual terror that you guys came with, I'm having a little bit of a hard time, like, thinking I can control this episode,
Right.
And so I can't imagine that you are remembering it wrong, because you had to, because I grew up with this. I grew up with it, feeling this anxiety about it. How can you be remembering it wrong? You were there.
Right.
You know?
And the thing is, but one of the other cousins, he says that he remembers, the front, us coming over to spend the night, and his mom, which is my father's sister, his mom locking the doors, and Juan pounding on the doors. Let me in. I want to see my kids. And she's telling her brother, no. Then I'm starting to second guess things. Is my memory correct? Because everything I've been told about Grandma is false. I'm learning that all these new things. So I was talking to Pat. I said, Pat, was Juan really and truly bad? Did I remember wrong? And he says, he wasn't bad for me. He said, what happened was, I had gotten married. I had a baby on the way, and I called up the house phone, because there's no cell phones back then. I called up and asked if I can come over and live with you guys for a little bit. Well, so that's when I learned that you guys left, because I had not been in contact with the family for a long time, for many years. But he was very nice to us. Very nice. He wasn't mean. He didn't show any drunken problems while he was drinking. He didn't show any of the problems. Yeah, he says it could be because he was trying to find us, and every once in a while he'll try and get information out of me, and I had to say, I honestly don't have that information.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody. I did not know my sister left with the kids.
Yeah. Well, this is what's hard, right? Like, history is told by people, and people's experiences or people's emotions color it. And it is hard sometimes to get what is true, and maybe collecting a ton of different stories with a ton of different variations from a lot of people can actually give you a better picture about what it is, because not one person is going to have it all true. But I don't know.
That's true. The first few books in the New Testament, each one wrote about the account of Christ,
right,
by their perspective,
right.
Because
they're slightly different.
Yeah. So I think about that too. And so your dad's experience with him was different than, because we weren't there.
Right.
So.
Well, and I would be cautious also too. Like you said earlier, everything you've learned about your grandma is false. And I don't think that is accurate. I think that there are some things that you've learned that are not true, or they've been misconstrued. I think that it would be dangerous just to take Fred's word for it, just because it's one person's word for it. And he's got his own experiences, he had his own relationship with Grandma that was unique to him, and it may or may not be accurate, just depending, right? Because it's just one person's experience. So that's why collecting, like you did, and going to my dad as well and seeing what his idea about it. And that's also why I'm glad that they're doing a DNA test, because
same here.
Well, do you feel classified as white people in your life? Like, do you feel Hispanic, or do you feel white, or a mix? Like, what do you classify yourself?
On paperwork, I write both.
Okay.
On paperwork, because if there's some type of scholarship, because I was going to college a few years back, and so if there was a special college scholarships, for people who are mixed race or have a certain amount, because I was 50% of my father,
Right.
then I should get some type of scholarship. You know how certain cultures can get diseases and other cultures don't and stuff like that. And so that could help like with statistics or something like that. So
Yeah.
I say that I'm both culture. I was ashamed
Oh.
to say, yeah, I'm half Mexican. And I would say I'm 100% white.
Hmm.
And if anybody said you look Mexican, I used to go crying to my mom.
Oh.
This person called me Mexican, because I took it as it was bad because of my past. Basically, I used to say, yeah, I'm white, mark everything white.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, why mark everything white? Because I've gotten older, more mature, and I have a different mindset.
Right.
And so it's like, so I start marking, both cultures down.
Mm-hmm.
Both races.
Haven't you told me?
Because I am.
You are. Yeah, you frankly are. You're half and half.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny too. Like, I think the Mexican part of you that I am well familiar with, like, making enchiladas or those kind of things.
Uh-huh.
That is adopted from your white mom. Like,
yes, I know.
Anything that all the Spanish that all of the food that and the history that about your Hispanic culture is from your white mom. Yeah, it's very funny, I think.
You know why? It is. It's kind of funny. But you know why she did that?
No.
She didn't want me to forget where I came from.
Hmm.
She didn't want me to be ashamed of who I am. And so she tried to make me not ashamed of myself. There are good people. Your father wasn't the greatest. He wasn't good. He had faults. And so, but she said that you are good. For the longest, I was afraid of Mexicans after we left. I was afraid.
Yeah. So you had a lot of trauma that you experienced. And I think when you were growing up, you were mostly a little half white kid in another culture, basically, weren't you? For the first 8 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because you're trying to fit in
mm-hmm.
into one culture, especially when we moved to all white town.
Right.
And so here I am, super tan. I don't know if that's probably why I avoided the sun a lot, but over the years I've gotten lighter.
I know. I think it's funny that you feel more Mexican now that you look more white.
I know.
The older you get, the more you lighten. Yeah.
Well, that's because I'm more accepting of myself even more. Even though my mom always accepted me, she wanted me to accept myself too.
It took a while for you to learn that lesson, I think.
That took a very long time. Very long time.
Were there any experiences that made you learn that lesson faster? Were there any key moments that you can think of that you were just kind of yeah, this is what I am?
I remember my brother, he would get into fist fights if anybody called him a Mexican.
Oh, really? He didn't want to be Mexican either, huh?
No, he did not back then. We've always told that this dribbling name comes from Poland. My mom always told me that. I remember telling kids on the playground when in elementary, I didn't say, "Oh, I'm a Mexican." I said, "I'm Polish." Because I left out Mexican.
I remember talking to people about being Polish, Drablinski. I mean, yeah, I brought that out all the time. Yeah,
exactly like that. And I remember being called Polak on the playground because of that.
Oh yeah, that wasn't a thing when I'm in a little bit different generation than you. I guess that tells our ages. Yes. Just a little bit. There's just a tiny bit of disconnect there. Yeah, I think that was going out.
Jokes came out
yeah,
too.
That was going out of style when I was.
But it was funny, and I would say, "Yeah," I didn't say, "Yeah, I'm Mexican."
Right.
I'm Polish.
You're like, "Yeah, I'll be a Polak. Sign me up."
Yes.
1/32 Cherokee with Aubrey Jean, and with all the favors I can cash in. Produced by me,
Aubrey. Executive produced by nobody, because I don't know what that means. The Anchor app by Spotify holds my hand for all the engineering. The music is also found on Anchor. You can rate and review this show on many podcast platforms someday, and you might find your review featured on a future episode. Or I might burn it in effigy. Got comments? Send me a message at anchor.fm/Aubrey-Jean. That's anchor.fm/Aubrey-Jean.